Hello and welcome to the Killik and Co market update. This week we've had two fairly high-profile IPOs happening. The first one was the Hut Group, or THG, which is the largest ever e-commerce IPO to happen in Europe. And it was good to see this IPO happening on the London market for two reasons. One, the London market is underexposed to technology, and hopefully the addition of the Hut Group will help to address this imbalance. While the Hut Group is an online retailer, it also offers an end-to-end e-commerce solution where it provides a package of payment solutions, websites, customer services, courier packages, and it sells this solution on to other retailers who want to grow their own online businesses, not dissimilar to the way in which Ocado helps other online supermarkets. So for this reason, THG is both an online retailer and a technology platform, so that's why we consider it to be partly a technology company. Aside from the tech factor, it's also just generally good to see a fairly large IPO happening on the London market because it shows that there is still confidence in the London market despite all the concern that's happening around the current Brexit negotiations. THG's IPO was considered to be a success and the shares were up 26% on the first day of trading, and that gave the company a market capitalisation of over £5 billion, technically making it large enough to join the FTSE 100 index. Over in the US, we had the IPO of a company called Snowflake, and there was quite a lot of hype around this one because of the news that Warren Buffett had invested. Snowflake is a data warehousing company which helps to analyse very large data sets which can be split across various different cloud computing providers. The shares on the day of trading rose by over 100%, and at one point in the first trading session, the company had a market capitalisation of over $90 billion, a huge amount that makes the company over 7 times more valuable than it was valued at back in February when it raised some funds privately. While it is great to see so many investors being interested in new issues, some investors might be questioning whether or not this valuation is too high, bearing in mind that Snowflake has yet to make a profit. This is one that we'll be watching quite closely over the coming days. There's been a big rise in demand for coronavirus tests since children went back to school at the start of this month. Lots of people have reported not being able to get a test anywhere near where they live, or else they've reported having to wait quite a long time to get the results of their test. And this means that lots of workers are stuck at home, either not able to go back to work because they can't get a test themselves, or they're stuck at home looking after a child who can't go back to school because they haven't had a test. Have a look at this chart here taken from the government's website, which shows the current level of testing capacity in the UK. The grey line shows the level of testing capacity in terms of the number of tests that are actually available and also the numbers of NHS staff that are available to administer the tests. In these terms, our capacity is over 300,000 tests per day, but if you look at the dark blue line, you can see that only about 200,000 tests are actually being processed every day. Boris Johnson has acknowledged there is an issue here. There is not enough laboratory capacity to process all of the completed tests, and that means that only 200,000 tests can take place each day. Businesses have complained about the issue and will be hoping that this gets resolved quickly, because if it isn't and if workers continue having to stay home, it could have a real impact on the speed of the UK's recovery. And finally this week, the Bank of England has announced that it will be leaving interest rates on hold at 0.1%. However, the minutes that were published on the same day made it quite clear that the bank has been exploring the possibility of negative interest rates. Negative rates would make it much harder for banks to make money, and therefore when these minutes were published, we did see a fall in the shares of banking stocks. Let's have a look at the relevant quote from the minutes of the Bank of England's meeting. The quote says that the committee had discussed its policy toolkit and the effectiveness of negative policy rates in particular in the August monetary policy report, in light of the decline in global equilibrium interest rates over a number of years. Subsequently, the MPC, or the Monetary Policy Committee, had been briefed on the Bank of England's plans to explore how a negative bank rate could be implemented effectively, should the outlook for inflation and output warrant it at some point during this period of low equilibrium rates. The Bank of England and the Prudential Regulation Authority will begin structured engagement on the operational considerations in the fourth quarter of 2020. So this quote really does show that the bank has seriously considered that possibility of negative interest rates in future. Moving on to have a look at next week, we've got results out from Accenture and Nike. That's it from us. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next Friday.